Welcome to another one of our Wednesday conversations. Pastor Mike and I are going to share with you a little bit from Luke chapter 15 and this story of two sons that show up. And so we're going to read the story and then dig into it a little bit.
Luke 15:11. Jesus continued, "There was a man who had two sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he'd spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and went to his father.
But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to the slaves, 'Quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate. Now his elder son was in the field. And when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. He replied, 'Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he has got him back safe and sound.' Then he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, 'Listen, for all these years I have been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you have never given me even a young goat that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him.' Then the father said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice, because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found.'" I'm always really careful when I introduce this story that it's the story of two sons, because I think we always focus on one, and I always want to say, okay, what do we learn from each son?
Yeah.
And so from the younger son, obviously, we learned that there are things that we can do that will end up leaving us far away from home, far away from our Father. I'm curious, what is the first thing that comes out when you start reading this story? What's the first thing that you notice and you want to talk about?
It's interesting to me because I think within the context of Jesus' audience, the first thing that pops out to me is the graciousness of God, the welcoming back, the Father welcoming back the prodigal son. Jesus talked about the lost sheep and bringing them back and celebrate it, or the lost coin and celebrate with that. And then you have the elder son who has been so diligent and sees what's happened to the younger son and feels so slighted, so dismissed. So I think that the two characters seem to be, Jesus quite rightly just paints them in such stark contrast. What do you think of?
For a long time, I couldn't figure out what the older son did wrong. I'll be totally honest. I totally identified with that older son, because I never really had that phase where I ran off and did something crazy or separated from family or anything like that. I was really kind of diligent, and I always kind of thought, yeah, maybe the older son is right not to want to come into the party, because he's frustrated by what's going on. It took me a while to start to realize that was actually what was inside me, was this older son separating himself from the party. And that's, every time I read this story, I have to remind myself not to miss that the older son gets an invitation to the party and doesn't go. And I always wonder how much Jesus is trying to talk to the people around him and say, don't you see this invitation is for you? And they're standing there and they've got their arms crossed and they're going, no, Jesus, we've been at church the whole time. We don't need an invitation. This is already our party, and our party should be the good one. So, yeah, I always find that piece of it to stand out to me.
I think one of the pieces that I missed for a long time is how similar the two brothers are.
Mm-hmm.
They both look at life as a zero-sum game,
Mm-hmm.
which is to say, you either win or you lose. For the younger son, he either gets his inheritance, breaks away, and goes to live his own life, or he feels like he's going to die in that house under the shadow of his older brother.
Yep.
Then you got the older brother who thinks that if I don't live up to all of this and get my dad's recognition,
Mm-hmm.
I'll just die because I won't get the love of my father. And I think the parable says they're very similar, and the invitation, which you just pointed out, is to both of them. It's not a zero-sum, he wins, he loses, but both are invited in to the party.
Yeah, they both belong.
They both belong.
Yeah. This is the story for me that I see play out all the time in our culture. I don't know about you. I mean, we see stories play out all the time, but this is the story that I see on repeat over and over again. It's groups of people who are going, I didn't get my fair share, or you didn't get your fair share, or that isn't right. And so we end up defending. For me, Jesus is telling a story about defending territory.
Yes, yes.
You know, and as the older brother defends his territory, he loses what he had. Because the story rightly points out, the father says, everything I've had is yours. Everything I've had is yours. And I've often told this story for church audiences, Christian audiences, and I say, if you're looking at the younger brother and you're going, man, I just wish I could have lived like them and then still gotten here at the end, I'm thinking, do you not realize the joy of being in God's presence today and yesterday and last week and weeks before that? Do you not see that there's a benefit there? And we're all just going, well, that looks like fun, and I wish I would have gotten to do that too. And I'm thinking, yeah, but we've seen people do all kinds of crazy things, and it living through it, you know, what is it, a momentary joy, but it's a long-term pain.
Yeah.
The younger brother struggled.
Yeah.
The older brother thinks, oh, he's having an easy life, but the younger brother's just
well, and I always identify with the younger son, because it was a time when I left the Christian church and fancied myself a Buddhist and just really broke away. And I came to a point where I realized that that was bankrupt. And the grace of God embraced me once again. And it was a powerful, powerful moment. There are two pieces, I think, that I would want to point out. One is, I think you're absolutely right on. I've had friends say, but you left the church and came back, and you know the grace of God, and whereas I was always in there. And I said, you don't know how good you have it. And you need to be able to share that. And the older son missed it. The other thing that strikes me, particularly in this time, is change. The younger son has to change because it's too painful to remain the same. The older son doesn't have to change because at this point at least, there's no pain deep enough to force him to change. And the question then I raise is, what about us in our cultural context, is there sufficient pain to cause real change? Or, to use your words, which I think are right dead on, or is there insufficient change so that what we do is we feel a threat and want to protect what we have?
Mm-hmm. And when we protect what we have, we end up shutting ourselves out of what we had.
Yeah, that's right, and we end up losing it.
I always had my dad, and then I said I'm not coming to the party, but my dad's in the party. Oh, look at this separation. I've separated myself.
Yeah.
I've really found myself reflecting in the last few weeks as we've been talking about race and inequality in our country, and I found myself reflecting on this last piece of the verse. Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours, but we had to celebrate. We had to celebrate because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost, and he's found. And I think it's so easy to slide into a form of faith that when people show up, we say, I don't know if you belong. When people are given opportunities, when people are given what is rightfully belongs to them, because as we know, God's grace rightfully belongs to everybody. But because we had it and now it seems to be going, we go, oh my goodness, well, what if God gives to them what really belonged to me? And I constantly am thinking, how can we have such a small view of God that we think that giving to the brother means I will have less?
Yeah.
When in fact it means that we will be more together. Yeah.
One wonders if, to go beyond the parable, which is always dangerous.
Yeah.
One wonders if the older son came to the party, and of course Jesus, I think, leaves us with that question.
Absolutely.
But one can't help but wonder, if he goes to the party, could there be a reconciliation? Because you think about what the younger son could teach the older son, having been away from the family, distant from the father, and how much the older son could teach the younger son about being faithful and diligent. And those are the kinds of creative conversations I think families have, and as a society, I think we can have them, but we need to come together.
And if we refuse to have those conversations, we're always missing something.
Yeah. One of the things, it seems to me that so often when we hang on to something that we have, reminds me of an ice cube. The longer and the harder you hold on to an ice cube, the faster it melts. If you're willing to keep it open, the ice cube remains whole. And I think how often we want to hang on and then there's nothing there.
Yeah. That's a good image. Anything else you wanted to add as part of this conversation?
No.
No?
That's
Okay.
pretty good.
Well, I think this is
Thank
actually
you.
a pretty solid day and a solid digging into this. We'll continue to put these out on our social media channels, so keep watching for that through the eConnect and in other ways. But it's good to be with you. Have a great day.
Have a great day.